In this video, we're going to look at a quick and easy way of centering a fixed position container. This is often quite difficult just simply because really the way it works makes sense, but at first glance doesn't really actually make sense. So we'll be going and looking at the calculations and why we give certain percentages to things, blah, blah, blah. So this is an example that we've got on the page here. I've put some content in the background just so we can sort of scroll and see that this is fixed width, fixed position. Sorry. So as we come in, you can see that this is already responsive. So this will work responsively. I've positioned my container about 60% here of the width of the page, but you can increase this, and we'll go through the calculations in a moment. And obviously, to demonstrate, this is a fixed width container. So you might be using this for something like a modal window, like a light box. If you're using something like JQ Modal, which is a jQuery modal plugin, it tends to get a little complicated because you have to implement your own style. So this is a great starting point if you want to sort of create a modal or a light box from scratch or something like that. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and start to write some code out here and write the CSS to make this happen. So as you've already seen, some of the page content's just taken up by this sort of lorem ipsum text that I've pasted in from Cupcake Ipsum, which is a little more exciting. We've also got a title. I've linked to style sheet in, which is global.css, which we'll be writing our styles in. And at the bottom here, I've got this container. Now, I've refreshed my browser, and now you can see the container contents down here. So we're sort of starting afresh with this container that we've got, and we'll be working with this container exclusively. So this is all of the markup that you actually need. You just need the container, and then bung something in the container content. It could be an image, it could be a gallery, a sort of scrolling gallery, anything. So the main container. Now, what do we want to do with this? Well, let's go ahead and actually apply our class. So container. So the first thing we want to do is set the position to fixed, and we'll go ahead and give this a background of white. Now I've given a background of this CCC color, AAA, which is like a dark lightish grey already. Now at the moment, nothing much is going on here, so we need to sort of position this. So let's give this a width, and we'll get it sort of in position. So I'm going to give this a width of 80%. We'll play around with these in a moment, and let's give this a top value of 15%. So we want it to come 15% from the top of the page. So now you actually see the container. We've got the container content in there. However, it's not looking great. It's just sort of sat in here. It is a fixed width. You can see if you scroll up and down the page. But you know, it's not centered, and we're not achieving the effect that we want. So what we need to do is, ignoring top, let's just put that up there because it's not really important. From here onwards are the styles, the properties, CSS properties and values that we're going to focus on. So the width is 80%. So I'm going to give this a left value of 10%. So if I was to sort of line this up as I wanted, so that's more or less central. In fact, that is central. So this works perfectly. So essentially everything is working here. However, what if I want to go ahead and give this some padding? Well, if I want to give this padding of say 20 pixels, that's going to mess things up a little, because padding is going to push this to the right hand side, and now we've got an uneven container. The first solution would be to reduce the left, so we could say, oh, let's guess at sort of 7% and see what happens there, and you could sort of guess it. I want this to be perfectly in the center though, and I also want this to make sense on a smaller viewport. So doing that might not make sense on a smaller viewport. I might want to decrease the padding. There might be a large image in here or something that I want to give sort of dynamic padding to. So I'm going to set the left back to 10, and I'm going to set the padding to say 5. So seems like a sensible amount. Now it's still messed up because we've added this sort of 5% padding on here. So how do we sort of calculate this? Well, this is the way I do it. Let me just go ahead and bring up a calculator. So I want the width to be 80%. So I need to work out my left and my padding. Now 80% width plus padding 5% on the left and 5% on the right is 10. That leaves us with 90. Now we need to accommodate enough space for left 10% and right 10%. So if we add on left 10% and right 10%, oops, messed that one up. So 80 overall, 5 pixels for the left padding, 5 pixels for the right padding, 10% for the, sorry, I said pixel, I meant percent, 10% for the left and 10% for the right. That leaves us with 110, which is obviously coming over here. So what we need is, we need to calculate this so we have a 10% space on the left and right, padding adds up, and added to this is 100% in total. So what we're going to do is we are going to say width 80, so that's 80, plus 10 on either side is already 100. So we either have the choice of reducing the padding or reducing the left. So now what we've got is we've got a width of 80 plus a padding on the left and right of 5%, which is 10, and then we add the left and right, even though we're not defining a right property, I guess we could, but we could say plus 5 on the left and plus 5 on the right, so that will leave us with 5 on the right, and we have 100%. So these styles here, as they stand, if I go ahead and refresh, we have a perfectly centered container here, which will scale down nicely on smaller devices and scale up on larger devices. So that's essentially it. We have a centered container, a fixed position container, and we've looked at the logic around calculating the width, the left, and the padding for this container to keep it always central and scale down and up nicely on different devices.